light within our hearts, light within our thoughts, light within our words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. With me today on the show, I have my good friend David Slater, who is a spiritual counselor and intuitive. And the topic we wanted to address today, how we think about our spiritual practice, try to boil this down. The way we do our spirituality should be congruent and healthy and make sense, both in terms of how we think about it and how we understand it as a group.
Mm-hmm.
That there are certain understandings within groups about interpersonal dynamics. An example of a sociologically unhealthy religious practice, for example, would be one that significantly engages in racism.
Yes.
That because it doesn't make sense, because the people you exclude may be the people upon whom you need to depend at a future time.
Yes.
So you're essentially sabotaging yourself by having a sociology that excludes other human beings.
Any one of them, yes.
Any one
Absolutely.
of them.
Yeah.
Because any one of them might be the one who helps you. That's an example of how we create sociological accountability. That in choosing how we practice our religion, our spirituality, that we do so in a way that builds bridges of constructive relationship with those around us.
Well,
with anyone around us, anyone who crosses our path.
Yeah. Spirituality, no matter what the flavor that people will put a label to it on, it speaks to oneness, and it speaks to divine love.
Mm-hmm. And inclusive divine love.
Absolutely.
Not a divine love where God's playing favorites.
Right. And even within their own belief, if they think they have a border around it and they're the only ones contained, you won't even see it there. You'll see folks excluding or pushing away other people, when, again, spirituality needs to be that divine love, no matter what flavor you put on it, whatever.
And there are a lot of old myths and folktales throughout the world of people who have, usually the stories start from the other side, to say that this or that deity or angel or somebody went down to earth and took a ordinary looking form so that no one would know who they were, and they went traveling someplace to see who would be nice to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they found people in every story. There's someone, usually a poor person, who says, "Oh, no, welcome. I'm happy to help you. Here, have some of my food. I don't have much, but you're welcome to have some food. You're welcome to spend the night here." And showing hospitality, having no idea that the person to whom they're showing hospitality is actually a divine being. That's a basic archetype of a story that exists in most cultures. I think within biblical terms, it's described as entertaining angels unaware.
Yes.
That what we see doesn't necessarily tell us who that is, so it's really more demonstrating our spirituality, demonstrating our religion in a way that confirms the basic principles of wisdom and love, of hospitality, of taking care of each other, all those sorts of things. The other half of this, and then I'll turn the conversation loose here anywhere you want to go with it.
We go everywhere, don't we?
Frequently we do. When we say that we want our spirituality or religious practice to be psychologically accountable, psychology, as I understand, is what goes on within our heads. And sociology goes on between us and those around us. Psychology is what goes on within our own heads. If we have to lie to ourselves in order to practice our faith, probably the most glaring example that comes to mind is the faith healer who prays over somebody with diabetes and says, claim your healing, go home and throw all your insulin away. And if the person acts on that, they will probably be in the hospital the next morning, unless somehow God has really done a miraculous healing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that can't happen, but if it were me and I were the diabetic in that situation, I would go see my doctor the next morning and ask for a new test to be done.
Right.
Before I threw the insulin away. So that if the healing was real, it needs to be manifest. Because if it's only real in my mind and not real in my body, throwing the insulin away is equivalent to committing suicide.
Exactly.
I don't intend any disrespect to faith healers. I understand that miraculous healings do happen. But there should be a psychological accountability to it, that you're not asked to do something that would endanger your life to prove your faith.
Right.
God doesn't need anything proved. God knows what the truth is, even the deepest truths of any person. The divine, the universe, whatever you want to call it, knows the deepest truth on every level and within every person. You don't have to prove anything.
Mm-hmm.
But if a change has occurred, there's no faithlessness in confirming it before you do something risky.
And how we approach anything with faith is unique to the person. And
and the definition of faith is probably unique to the person.
Absolutely. And
my only point is that if you think of a person as body, mind, and spirit, sociology would be the body, psychology would be the mind, and the spirit would be the spirituality, the religion. My contention is that the three act as a unified triangle.
Right.
Not in competition with each other. And consequently that the mind is accountable to the body and to the spirit, and the spirit is accountable to the mind and the body. Remember the three corners here.
And
each of them is accountable to the other two.
Right. And none can operate without the other two. Absolutely.
If any one of them resorts to falsehood or lying or self-deception or societal deception, it breaks the triangle, breaks the containment, and essentially terminates the life.
And thus the experience. And that's where it all boils down to. It is the experience that's the important part. We are a spirit experiencing this life. And I am surprised, though, how often people want to shrug off accountability. So many people want to prove what's unprovable. How do you prove your faith, your belief? Okay. And many people don't even have a belief to start with. So you're saying that they want to be accountable to only that which they can prove? Yes. Okay. And as one, let me take that a little bit further. There are things that you get healed. The healer does the amazing thing with the diabetes. It isn't a matter of proving or disproving. It's the experience itself. Okay. And the way the spirit is changed by the changed experience. Exactly. How are you going to be a more spiritual or different person because you receive the healing? Right. And if you validate it, you don't have the faith. You don't have the ability. And I don't think God's primary concern is lower medical bills for the next 30 years. Exactly. That it's something much more profound than just the fact that you're not taking insulin anymore. then let me take it this direction as far as the belief. When we interact with folks that have a belief structure, oftentimes they'll claim or quote one and show no evidence of the fact that they believe that. Prime example.
Okay.
You can have the belief in reincarnation, and you can have the belief that you only get one shot at this life.
Okay.
And again, you can't corroborate that. You can't.
There's no way to validate or prove it, either one.
Exactly. The thing is, they'll argue it, they'll debate it, they'll call the other side the bad, terrible side, but you don't see the people living that belief. If you only have one shot at this, if this is only one life, and you have no experiences in a day, it isn't a vivid, incredible day every single day, I start to wonder if you truly do believe you get one shot at this.
Because you're not taking it as seriously as you could.
Exactly. Or
as someone has said, life. This is not a dress rehearsal.
Exactly.
Life is what it is.
Right. And
it's not a rehearsal.
And sometimes it's not the serious part. They won't laugh either. If you get one shot at this, I want to laugh every chance I get, as well as cry, as well as mourn, as well as feel what ecstasy means.
Not to get stuck in any one emotion or one state.
Oh, every one of them.
To try to embrace all of them appropriately and in turn, not all at the same time, obviously.
And profoundly if you can.
And profoundly.
Yeah. On
the flip side, if someone really does believe in reincarnation, having respect for that belief would still recommend against being wasteful and irresponsible in your living of life. I don't have to do anything serious because I'll get another chance anyway. That's not what a
teaching and
respectable.
Okay, gotcha.
If you talk to any spiritual leader of any religion that believes in reincarnation, none of them will say that because of reincarnation you get to be irresponsible in your living of life. None of them. That is not part of any correct understanding of what reincarnation is.
The basic premise in reincarnation is you're here to learn something, and
you grow, and each time around you're higher level.
Yes,
or something,
or more learned, if nothing else.
Something that you didn't have or learn before.
Right. If that's the case, we need to give ourselves the forgiveness so that we can learn that. We will get so stuck on any one thing that we get wrapped up in the conflict of a lack of forgiveness. We get nowhere in it.
Well, and an intelligent spiritual practice of forgiveness is seriously empowering to sociology.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
To our social relationships, to the way we interact and define ourselves as groups.
A lot of the nations in Africa have been embracing the amnesties.
Okay.
And I find those remarkable. So there's a genocide, and after it gets resolved, fixed to a healthier government after that, an amnesty is given where. And I can't imagine living next to or in the same town with a person who ordered the death of my family. And yet people are doing that. And I find that really remarkable, not even necessarily based in a religious belief.
It would have to be a genuine embrace of amnesty, all the way to the heart level, that they really are forgiving the person who, through whatever context, played a role that maybe they wouldn't have played in any other context.
And it's a fascinating series of stories to read and to experience, because our protected life we have here in day-to-day America, it's not usually the concept of embracing. We may have one or two or even a half dozen people in our life that have wronged us, but to have killed our entire family isn't usually the wrong that they did. Excuse me. It was a perception of something, of an unkindness, if nothing else, or a victimization. And I could go on a whole different rant on that one as far as forgiveness. But
and part of sociology should be recognizing that every perpetrator was once a victim.
yes, and being able to see the power that is in the average human being. We as human beings can forgive. We as human beings can, after millennia of training in a fearful series of societies, can still spot and encourage and grow love. What kind of being is that? That's impressive. That's astounding. And when we can start understanding the psychology of the amazingness of the human being and promote it into the sociology, or the as a group, the power of the human being, this is what seems to also be sitting at the core belief of no matter what your spiritual practice is, of us being a spirit contained in this bag of water. And what is a spirit capable of doing? And in turn, what is a bag of water capable of doing? Just recently, and I don't want to use too much in the way of current events, but I did see something that was rather compelling. Someone had driven into a flooded stream, thinking they could get through. The car goes completely under. Rescuers show up and they can't break the window of the SUV. And one of the rescuers reaches in and, for some strange reason, feels the woman's hand, grabs it, pulls it out, presuming that she either rolled down the window or it was broken or whatever. Pulls her out, she's rescued, everything's all good. Then they tow the vehicle out, and none of the windows are broken. And none of the windows are rolled down. What is a human being capable of doing? And is there something that says, oh, it rolled down and rolled back up? I don't know. But it asks the important question. What is a human being capable of doing?
Well, and of course, there would be lots of faith-oriented people who would, immediately shrug and just say, well, then, it's divine intervention. That somehow the usual laws of the universe were suspended, or the material was dematerialized, or something. But I've heard of all sorts of stories like that. I've been in situations that defied explanation like that. A couple young ladies who were leaving a shopping mall one evening, and a couple men started toward their car in a threatening manner, and they ran to the car, jumped in, and started up and drove off. And the guys were totally in shock, freaked out, and just totally ran from the scene as fast as they could. They got home and found out there was no battery under the hood.
Oh, wow.
So theoretically, there's no way the car could have started. But she turned the key, the engine started, and they drove home. But when they got home, there was no battery under the hood of the car. Presuming then that these two men had stolen the battery and meant to do something to the women. Quote unquote, impossible things are happening. Does that release our spirituality, our religious practice, from being psychologically and sociologically accountable?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I go back to, if it's divine intervention, God using us for any one things, He used us. And to understand that I am not interacting with someone to get them to believe the way I believe. I'm not interacting with someone to say I'm right and they're wrong. I'm interacting with a powerful being. And I get to have an experience that is part of my divine experience by experiencing this other being, this other human being. And
it may be a bit of a stretch, but I feel like in some ways the psychological accountability comes through in the awareness that what we perceived or experienced was in fact a miracle. That without psychological accountability, there would have been nothing impressive about driving a car home without a battery, or
Right.
or pulling a woman from a car when all the windows were still rolled up.
Right.
But because there is psychological accountability, to recognize that a miracle has occurred.
And be free with the concept of a miracle.
Mm.
The time that someone speaks kindly to another human being, someone who reaches out, someone who melts another person's heart with just a simple act of love.
Mm.
Any less of a miracle I can't imagine. It's
not to digress, but
okay.
I'm sure there'll be people who, because they have experienced loss, would really like to know why the miracles can't happen when they want them to happen.
Yeah, God's a vending machine.
Why did that person get pulled from the car with the closed windows, but my loved one suffocated and died?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's where I come back to the controversial faith healer, Catherine Kuhlman. When she says that, I don't know why God doesn't heal everybody, but I'm very afraid of those who say they do.
Right.
That there's, in those moments, we are confronted with mystery, with the fact that we have psychology and sociology, we have our groups, we have the ways we think, we have our religious practice, our own spirituality, and through all of them, from time to time, there is still this occasional strand of pure mystery, of reminding us that we don't see all the dimensions of reality or all the dimensions of life, and we don't understand all there is, but we have to do the best we can with what's available to us. But that accountability creates an awareness, I think.
Another aspect to that accountability, the story that you quoted, the often common story between all spiritual beliefs of the angel unaware.
Mm-hmm. Entertaining angels unaware.
Isn't it fun to try and be that angel? What I've run into this situation where you see somebody with a flat tire and you go and help them, and you're happy to do it instead of, I've done my duty and that type of thing to get my merit badge. But
give me your address so I can send you a check later. No, and that's where we come to this wonderful. It's totally come out in common language now to say "pay it forward." Mm-hmm. That came out of a movie, and in which a young boy decided to be giving for the sake of just because he could, and instead of being paid back, to tell them to help. Each time I help you, you help 3 other people, and those 3 people would help 3 other people, and it became this exponentially expanding pyramid of one good act producing 3, producing 9, producing 27. Or anyway, and beyond that, I have to draw it out on paper because I can't keep track of the math. But suddenly you have this tide, this ocean, this flood of goodness going out into the world because of this notion of paying it forward. That every time somebody does something nice for me, I'm going to do something nice for 3 people.
I had an interesting experience one time. I helped somebody with a flat tire, and I did. I could do it. They needed the help, and so it seemed like the perfect fit. And I've had people look at me and go, "Are you an angel?" And I said, No, thinking they were kidding. And they said, "No, seriously, are you an angel?" And finally, it went back and forth enough times. I said, "Okay, if I'm an angel, no one told me." But the point
The
being,
way I usually answer it
uh-huh.
is to say that we are all each other's guardian angels.
Yes.
And consequently, it becomes imperative that we do whatever good we can whenever the opportunity presents itself.
Yes.
You're not asked to do more than you can, but be sure to do as much as you can.
Uh-huh.
You know, and if you're a woman driving home at night and someone has a flat tire, you know, I don't think you need to unnecessarily put yourself at risk, but you might be the one to immediately pick up your cell phone and call 911 and say somebody is stranded along the highway at this mile marker.
Mm-hmm.
Please send help.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to do what you can
Mm-hmm.
in a wise and intelligent way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that, I guess, ultimately, to me, is what the accountability of psychology and sociology to spirituality is all about. That, as Mother Teresa said, you go to a situation, you see what you can do, and you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
And if you can't, move on or get somebody else to do it.
well, that comes into doing what you can.
Yes. Uh-huh.
You know, if you don't feel that you can do this much, maybe you can still do that much.
Mm-hmm.
So do what you can.
Indeed.
And in that sense, you keep yourself accountable to your thoughts, to your body, to your relationships, to your soul.
Absolutely.
It's when everything stops and the action doesn't happen that I find myself worrying that the spirituality is no longer real.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for everything you shared today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching.